Okay. There we are. I'm doing that thing that everyone does at the beginning of Facebook Lives. Hello, everybody. And welcome to Resilient Futures number 2, where we're going to be talking, I'm going to be talking to Loic Hares about grid services, which on the surface does not sound like the most exciting subject, but which very much is, and you're going to find out exactly why.
Doing that thing that everyone does at the beginning of Facebook Lives. Hello, everybody.
What is happening now?
Oh, that was weird.
That was weird. That threw me slightly, my apologies. So I'm going to just introduce where we're at and why grid services is interesting and why you should know all about it. So it's a hot day today. 36 degrees was predicted, I think. As a reference point, some of you might remember the summer of 76. It's still a kind of a cultural meme, really. It's the hottest summer on record, although that's not strictly true now. 45 years later, the highest temperature that year was 35.9. Today's supposed to be 36 degrees, and it's not really even been commented on, has it, in the press? I'm not sure. So it's probably appropriate that we're talking about energy, use of energy, renewable energy, in the face of increasingly evident climate change, really. How much do you know about the energy you use? Most of us have an idea how it's made, but actually how it gets to us, how it gets to our kettle on a daily basis is a bit more opaque and actually far more complicated. But fundamental to the, I've written here, efficacy of any measures put in place to skew the energy generation industry in favour of renewable energy, and of stated intentions of carbon zero status towards a cleaner, greener and brighter future. We need the grid, we need it to function, we need it to work well with, we need to be resilient and to work brilliantly with renewable sources. So there we go. I'm going to hand over to Loic and ask him to give us a bit of a background on the energy network, because it's something he knows far more about than me.
So before we kind of go into the terms of like flexibility, we thought it was a good place to start to just talk a little bit more about our grid as a whole. So our electricity network was, I think, designed in the early 60s or 70s, where coal power stations were, the main form of generating power. And coal power stations were very, they had a specific output and they couldn't really be changed up or down.
Predictable.
Yeah. So, for National Grid manage the electricity network across the UK. So their job is to make sure that enough electricity is being generated at one end of the supply chain to match what is being used by us at the other end of the supply chain. So they have to make sure that they're looking at weather data, they're looking at maintenance data for all the different power stations, so that they can manage exactly what's going in with what's going out. And that's their main purpose in life, is to make sure that if they had a big tank of water with a tap going in the top, they have to make sure that that tap is flowing at the right rate to match whatever's going out the bottom of the bucket. And they can adjust the flow rate of the tap at one end, but they can't adjust the flow rate of the tap at the bottom end. So they can alter how much is being generated, but they have no control over what is being used by the demand side, which is businesses, consumers, us. So it used to be a very easy thing, because they knew exactly how much coal generation was being made, and the demand was very predictable, because everybody worked to kind of 9 to 4 or 8 till 4 pattern. Everybody went home and cooked dinner, and it was all very, very predictable.
Is that where you get that tea thing?
Yes, absolutely.
I can't remember what it's called. An event, something event.
Yeah, so there's examples of situations where people I think that the last one was when Andrew Murray won the final at Wimbledon. Straight after he was given his cup, everybody went and put their kettle on, and the demand absolutely
blew everything up.
it caused some real issues for National Grid. So there are events like that which cause massive issues. But in the day-to-day running of the network, it's relatively predictable. But as we move towards our new kind of lifestyles, where it's bad to have coal power stations, so we're phasing them out. We're bringing in as much renewable energy as possible because it's low carbon, and that's the way forward, which is great. But low carbon renewable generation tends to be what is called intermittent. So wind turbines only work when it's windy. It's quite straightforward. And solar generation only works when it's sunny, or that's not quite true, but it is relatively. But so that generation is up and down depending on weather. And as we all know, when we look at the Met Office weather forecast, we all complained that it said that it was going to be sunny now, and it's not. It's raining. So that forecast, the lack of accuracy in forecast of weather has a massive impact on our network, electricity network. So you can imagine the scenario where it was forecast to be quite a gloomy grey day, and suddenly for a 2-hour period during the day, an area which has got a lot of solar generation has 2 hours of really good sunshine. National Grid wouldn't have taken into account that 2 hours block of generation in any way, and suddenly it's being flooded onto the network, and they need you can't just get rid of electricity when it goes onto the network. It's on.
That's the thing about energy, huh?
Yeah, absolutely. You can't get rid of it. You have to get rid of it. So they need the ability to be able to remove that electricity from the network.
How do they do that?
Well, that's a very good question, and that's where flexibility services come into play.
Yeah.
Another example is, as you stated, when Andrew Murray won the final at Wimbledon and everybody plugged their kettle in, they predicted that everybody would do that, but they didn't predict quite the magnitude of the peak that would come from everybody doing that. So they can't just flick a switch and generate more electricity to meet that demand. So they need another way to be able to cope with surges of demand, like at the end of the Wimbledon final. But as we move into a world where we use more and more electricity in different ways, this is becoming much more complicated for National Grid. So you can imagine that as soon as we move to electrified transport, so
vehicles,
taxis, and our personal cars being electrified, our nice predictable demand curves of how we use electricity are going to need to be thrown away into the bin, and a new world where you can plug your electric car in whenever you want, and that has massive impacts on your demand curve. And that's the scenario we're moving towards. And National Grid is very aware of this. They create what they call their future scenarios document every year, which looks at possible demands in the next few years, so that they're looking and tracking electric vehicle ownership. So they know it's coming, and they know that they have to make changes to the grid to adapt to our changing patterns. And that's where flexibility comes in. So this new term, flexibility, really is ways for National Grid to cope with the changing demands and generation on the grid.
Yeah.
So
we've just tested. Sorry, I was just going to say, you made me think that we must have just tested them pretty heavily with the massive, unpredictable change in requirement from COVID. I mean, that's huge. That's absolutely switched loads of stuff on its head. That must have had a massive impact.
The demand from businesses reduced drastically over that 3-month period where everything was lockdown. And although there was an increase in consumer demand as people started working from home, that's in no way made up by the lack of demand from the big manufacturing side. So there was a time where we saw a lot of negative pricing over the last 3 months, where actually the grid wanted you to use an energy because there's too much on the grid for periods of the day. So they the trading desks were showing negative prices for quite a large periods of time.
Yeah.
And it highlighted the fact that, you know, we are going into changing times. We need, you know, we need the ability to very quickly react to changing environments. So in some ways, for the electricity industry, you know, the pandemic was a good way of testing
Massive test.
our procedures and our different methodologies. So and you know, there wasn't that many blackouts, so that was the good news. But you know,
I think people expected them as well.
Whatever we had in place worked because there wasn't that many power cuts.
Yeah.
Where if that would have happened in the 60s or 70s, we probably would have seen massive blackouts for a long period of time.
I don't want to take you off your out of your stride. I probably just did, but I was wondering how much. If you're going to talk about that later, then let me know. But I was just wondering about how much storage affects because presumably, if you can store some of that extra energy, then you can distribute it more evenly when you need it. But
yeah,
as far as I understand, storage is not an easy thing.
So battery storage has become a thing in the energy industry over the past, I'd say, 6 years.
Yeah.
But because of the dropping price of lithium-ion batteries, and this is due to the take up of electric vehicles, because as you know, economies of scales dictate that as you produce more batteries, they become cheaper. As they became cheaper, it became viable as a project on the grid.
Yeah.
So there's been some really big battery projects across the grid, and we're talking about up to 10 megawatts, even bigger batteries, so massive batteries. And these batteries have the ability to, within 0.2 seconds, come online. So if the national grid sees a drop in, you know, frequency, they call it, a lot of the services are around frequency, where our main power in our house, our plugs, work at 50 hertz. If they drop below or above 50 hertz, it can cause massive issues. So when people say, oh, I had loads of light bulbs blow in my house, that could be the result of the frequency going up and it blows your light bulbs. Don't quote me on that. Don't start ringing your own electricity company saying, oh, all my light bulbs are blown. But
you obviously need a standard supply level.
Yeah, so as they see
it's not going to help
down or up, they call on things like batteries to start charging or discharging, depending whether they need more or less energy on the network. And the great thing about the battery industry is that because of these economies of scales driving the price of lithium-ion down, it's actually meant that it's economically viable to have small batteries in your house or your small business or your community, and you can start not only storing the electricity you generate from the sun and use it when you need it the most. So if you're out working during the day, you can use the power you're generating in the evening, but also you can make your battery available for flexibility services and earn some money by doing so. So National Grid pays battery operaters to have their batteries ready to help them out if need be.
Even very small scale ones, even an individual.
So, you know, this is probably a good time to plug Resilience Energy Technology. We offer a platform which adds together small batteries. So it's called Aggregating Together Distributed Energy. So, you know, we've got a project of potentially 80 homes coming on our platform in September, and we will add all of those 80 homes together, and those 80 homes all together is the same as a large battery. Yeah. So we're able to offer those individual households revenue from their battery by aggregating together and helping the national grid out.
So you can do that. You can do that with a kind of is it called? I think is it virtual power station or something like that. So you've got these kind of a large number of small batteries that on their own wouldn't really make a dent in demand, but you can, as you say, you can aggregate it all. I'm just trying to get it clear. You can aggregate it all together and use that and sell it as a whole, basically.
Yeah. So you know, talking site by site, you know, if you had a 5 kilowatt hour battery, which is a small battery, National Grid aren't going to like be jumping up and down for your 5 kilowatts hours of flexibility.
No, probably.
When 100 of those and you've got half a megawatt of storage, that's that could be useful to the National Grid. And we're starting to see now in the market, because it's probably important at this stage to explain that National Grid own the big pylons you see. So the high voltage network is owned by National Grid, and that distributes the power from the power stations, etc. When it gets down to kind of the power cables you see in your roads around near your house, that's a lower voltage, and that's owned by your local distribution network operator. There's 8 different areas in the UK owned by different companies, and they run and maintain the local low voltage network. So they own
private companies.
Yes, but because they're monopolies, they're tightly controlled by the regulator. So it's a bit of a weird industry, but they own the cables in your house all the way up to your meter. So just before your electricity meter in your house, there's a little black box, which is a fuse. They own everything up to there.
Wow.
But not many people know this.
I did not know that, and I should have done probably.
And those distribution network operators have got real big issues now, that they have transformers which might they step down the voltage from a voltage which is easily transported to the voltage you need in your house, and those transformers can take certain amounts of electricity. So they've been built, a lot of them were put in 20 years ago when our demand was relatively low. Now we're all looking at bringing in electric vehicles and charging at home. The voltage on those transformers are suddenly increased quite substantially, putting a lot of those transformers under a huge amount of pressure. Now, transformers are very expensive to replace, so the distribution network operating companies are faced with the decision of either replacing the hardware, so putting new cables in the ground, causing massive disruption.
Wow, yeah.
Changing the transformers, or they can try and use flexibility at a lower scale to help them out. So instead of changing a transformer, they could...
Where I'm looking quizzical at this point. It's really interesting.
I'm going into quite a lot of detail.
No, it's really good. It's really good. I'm just so
you don't want to lose people. So instead of
no, including me,
everybody in your street were to charge their vehicles at the same time,
yes,
make the transformer blow up.
Yeah.
In real terms. Yeah. So the owners have got two choice to make. Either they replace the transformer, they stop people charging their vehicles all in one go, or they can use batteries in that local area to go, hey, you've got a battery installed in your house.
Yeah.
If you discharge during the time when other people are charging, that means we can lower the capacity on the transformer and it won't blow up anymore.
Okay.
And it's a lot cheaper to pay money for people to, use their batteries than it is to replace the transformer. So we're seeing lots and lots of the distribution network operators trying to get people to use their batteries at a local level to help them out. So it's really to try and save them some money, but by saving them money, it saves us money, because that's part of our electricity bill, the cost to transport. So anyway, I don't think I was planning to go in so much detail.
Sorry.
So in other words, if you own a battery in your house, there's all of these different services now that you can actually take part in.
Yeah.
You actually get money back on the capital expenditure of the equipment you've installed, which is great, because the government no longer give you any money for the feed-in tariff.
No.
So if you use platforms like ours, you're able to access a different income stream for your solar plus battery, which can help make the business case for it. And we tell our customers that for a 5 or 10 kilowatt hour system, you could earn up to about £100 a year through this service, and that's very dependent on the area you live in, type of battery you've got installed, etc., etc. So, but it can vary, but it's still an income, and it's better than nothing. So it's definitely worth looking into. And as we use electricity more and more over the next 10 years, those services are only going to increase because we're going to need flexibility.
We're going to need, well, we're going to need
So,
more energy, aren't we? So we're going to need it, and presumably the prices won't go down. So anything we can do to mitigate that cost is surely a good thing, even if it looks like pennies on paper.
Yeah, and we think that the actual electricity costs to us over the next 10 years are going to increase quite substantially because of the demand put on the network. So
yeah,
you know, generating within your community, within your business, or within your house, you know, not only helps UK as a whole reach its carbon reduction targets, but it's also going to future-proof your kind of energy costs going forward, and that's something we should really think about now.
Yeah.
So one of the things we were going to talk about before I kind of went off track a little bit.
Yeah, sorry, it's me digging into the details because I mean, these are things that are really fundamental infrastructure things that we just don't know.
No, I think that nobody really knows how electricity is distributed in the UK, and it's I find it interesting, but that's because I'm a bit weird and I've only ever worked in the energy.
Yeah, I know, but the thing is, it is interesting. It surely is interesting because it's every single house.
Yeah,
it affects every single person. I mean, not just on an actual physical level.
Yeah,
I had no idea.
One thing we wanted to cover was that there's a lot of different terms referring to flexibility at the moment in companies. You know, there's grid services, grid charges, flexibility, trading, and there is some confusion on the kind of consumer side of things to what they all mean. And
yeah,
I suppose it's companies like ours trying to make their technology sound super good, and you know, so they use fancy words to try and describe it, but in reality everybody's looking to do the same thing, and that is to use any kind of spare capacity within your battery. So you know, if it's at 50%, it has the ability to either charge by 50% more or discharge 50%. So you know, and that's where when we talk about spare capacity, that's what we talk about. It's not only, you know, the ability to discharge by 100%, it's actually that the spare capacity to be able to go up and down. And that's important. So what we do is we make a guarantee to our customers that you'll never be better off by us trading your spare capacity. So you know, if we know that you're going to need that 50% stored in your battery because you're about to come home and you're about to, you know, cook and heat your water and all of those things you do as a, you know, as a consumer, we'll make the decision not to use that 50% there because it'll probably be better for you to use it.
Would that be based on your usage, your previous usage, your pattern of usage, because the app's quite clever. It reads what. Yeah,
we learn your consumer pattern. So you know, we start to see when you use electricity, when you're generating electricity. So we can build up a bit of a forecast for the next day to go, well, based on weather, you'll be generating this much. Based on your consumer patterns, you'll be using this much. Therefore, we'll have this much in the battery.
And you'll never. Well, you're saying it as though it's a comparison with other other companies.
Yeah.
You would never, and you're trading on people's behalf as well, aren't you? You're largely trading their energy for their benefit.
You know, the consumer's putting a lot of trust in you as a company to do the right thing, and I think it's very important to realise that as a consumer. You know, you're giving the ability to a third party to discharge and charge your battery, and I think that's a really important thing to take on board when you're buying a battery with solar and potentially signing up to grid services. So you have to have an element of trust with the company that is managing your battery for you. The second thing to be aware is that some companies, if you're tied into finance with the battery, then you have to be aware that if you then suddenly decide that, hey, you'd much rather just use the energy stored in your battery when you want to use it, and kind of break the contract with that third party who's charging and discharging your battery, that could affect the terms of your finance deal. it's something to really be aware of, because
they might be using some of that energy to pay that an aspect of that.
If you sign a 10-year agreement, they've forecasted to use your battery for those 10 years. So if you tell them that you don't want them to manage your battery anymore, that could affect your financing agreement with them. So it's a complicated market, but it has the real benefit to make the case for renewable energy, which is massively important for us at the moment, because we need to reduce carbon as a whole. And really the best way as a consumer to reduce your carbon is to generate carbon-free electricity. And if you can capture that and use it whenever you need it, then you can reduce your carbon footprint as a household by 60–70%.
That's massive.
It is
even with demand going up.
If you looked at the network as a whole and reduced the consumer demand by 70%, or reduced the consumer footprint by carbon footprint by 70%, that would almost get a good way towards our target by 2050. So it's important that consumers are aware of flexibility and the fact that you are able to monetize your flexibility at a residential level or at a small SME level. It's not just for the big battery owners, but to really think hard about who you're contracting with, who you're buying it through, what kind of technology you're buying, and understanding the full concept of what you're getting into.
What are some of the terms that might be a bit misleading, or a bit not misleading, but kind of jargony? Are there terms that people might not understand? Because I think you sent me a list before, and I think I'm looking at, I don't know, grid trading, for example. I kind of get, you've just described really basically what that is.
Well, grid trading is one of those terms that can mean a lot of different things.
Yeah, exactly. I think that can,
people have the view of somebody in an energy trading desk trading, the energy stored in your battery.
Yeah. That might be what's in my head as well, actually. I think.
Yeah. So it's definitely, it's something which is probably on most people's roadmaps as technology providers, but we'd love to be able to do that. But there is so much that has to happen before you can actually do that as a company. But it's one of those things that, is slightly misleading. We're not actually trading. We're not selling the energy within your battery. We're using it for these flexibility services. So, it's basically the same thing, because we're selling the energy in your battery at the best price we can do in flexibility, but it's not actually a kind of trade basis. So, take it how you want it to mean it. But
I didn't mean to suggest that you were being misleading. No. Just that it's open to, I think they're all quite open to interpretation. If you don't know, which is the point of doing something like this, isn't it? Is to try and get information.
Sometimes, people think that, they're going to get revenue from grid trading, they're going to get revenue from flexibility services, they're going to get revenue from this and that, and it's going to be a massive yearly amount they're going to get from the battery. And I think that it'd be great if we could do that, but the realities are that at the moment, really, there's only one or two services which are available to small scale batteries, and try and get the best deal you can on those, and then as an industry, we get better at managing smaller battery systems, and more services get added to that as people like the Doogheno's we're talking about realize the value of small distributed storage across their networks.
Well, as you said, as it aggregates anyway, doesn't it? The more people have it, the more you can group it together, and the more power it has as a whole.
Yeah, and we'll be able to be in a position where we speak to Ofgem, who's the regulator of the industry, in a year or two's time, and go, this is the benefits we are demonstrating to the network. Here they are, they've written down, this is what we've done. Let us be part of different things a bit more in the future, and we'll be able to start giving our consumers even more revenue for what we're doing. But I think it's just important to realise what you're signing up to now, and the potential for because it's a 10-year system or 10 to 15-year system you're buying.
And the structure, you've described how the grid has had to change anyway. It's constantly evolving and it's trying to accommodate new energy sources.
And it's massively changed in the last 5 years. So, 10 years, it's going to change even more. So you're in a good position if you've got some storage installed in your house today.
You tend to think of it as a static thing, I have to say, that a structure and a system that can't change because it's how it is.
And I think that's because of the way it has been previously. If you bought solar panels in the past, you signed up to a 25-year deal with the government for feed-in tariff. So, you didn't have to think about it. You installed it and that's it. You just sat back and saw the money coming in.
Let it pay for itself. Yeah.
But that's gone now. So it has to be a much more dynamic way of thinking about investments, really, because you're making an investment in this technology. And who knows what it's going to be in 5 years' time. But what we do know is that we're going to need this flexibility because of the way our network's changing. So, it's a great.
You're going to need the small suppliers if the demand's going up.
Yeah, you're going to need everybody to take part in it. Yeah, absolutely.
So the chances of losing money are high, low? Sounds as though it's unlikely.
Because you're saving at least 50% on your energy bills using solar panels on the battery. We try and tell our consumers, the people we speak to make the business case on the savings, and then anything you get via flexibility services is a bonus, because you can't make the business case work today using the flexibility services because it's a bit of an unknown. So if you can save 50% on your electricity costs today, then that's something you can do straight away, and it's money in the bank. And then if you can get these bonuses on top of that, then great, absolutely fantastic.
Sounds good. Do you? I'm going to ask you one slightly potentially contentious question. Do you think there's more that because the grid is a private company, right? Are they a private company? Or is it's probably more complicated than that?
It's very heavily regulated because they're in a monopolistic position, so they can't really they're very tightly controlled on what they can spend the money on.
I just wondered whether you thought there was more they could be doing to accommodate that, to change quicker, or to. I mean, they are clearly very aware of what they need to do.
I think there's definitely there's probably more that they can do in the realization that there's a lot more flexibility at a local level.
Yeah.
So because it's more useful to them, a lot of their strategies and contracts are based around larger systems. So a lot of their contracts have got a 1 megawatt minimum, which it could be as much as 150 homes to 200 homes really for us.
Yeah.
So having a realization that there are many people making the decision to install storage in their houses at the moment, and that through the VPP solutions that people like Resilience and Energy Technology are putting forward, flexibility can have a massive impact on their network, and it's there to be used and people are ready to use it, so please use it.
Yeah, absolutely. Sorry. Yeah.
But I have to, I don't want to make it sound too negative, because I think that the changes which have come through in the last few years
have obviously done a huge amount in the last.
Yeah, we wouldn't be here as a company if it wasn't for the fact that there is a commercial way of monetizing flexibility in people's homes, and that's come about in the last year or so. So it's the technology is there, the regulation is changing, taking to more and more account smaller distributed generation. So it's a great advancement in the energy market.
Well done, National Grid.
Absolutely.
Is there? I'm aware that we're a little over our time, but I've got time if you have. But is there anything else that you think we haven't covered that we need to talk? Probably it's a vast topic. But is there anything else anywhere else you wanted to go? I'm just trying to have a look at our plan, see whether we've gone over everything we said we would. but I think we're there.
So there's a quick question I see from Mr. Simon Gallagher.
Okay.
Installs networks of vehicle chargers across the UK. So, of course, this question is relating to vehicle to grid charging.
Yeah.
I know that a lot of people who had chargers connected via the Octopus flexible tariff were able to take advantage of the negative pricing during the kind of pandemic time. So yes,
they were essentially being paid to use energy.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
The Octopus Energy flexible tariff changes every half hour and
Wow.
kind of mirrors the wholesale price. So as the prices went negative, people who were connected via the Octopus flexible tariff were able to actually charge their vehicles. From
So if they went out and charged their car, then they were free, or it would.
They were getting to charge their vehicle, which is
yeah,
brilliant concept.
Yeah, brilliant.
So if you can base the business case of buying an electric vehicle on negative prices alone, you know, there'll be a no-brainer.
A really good sell.
Thanks for the Simon.
Yeah.
No, I think that's about it from us. So I think that was a really good session, and thanks for those who logged in and watched.
And we'll let you know what we decide to do next month. We'll be back in a month.
Yeah. No, I think that we've had quite a few questions around electric vehicles and vehicle to grid charging, etc. So I think it would be a great topic to kind of explore in one of these sessions. So maybe we should do that.
Yeah, well, let's do that.
Anyway,
that would be brilliant. And we'll leave you to your afternoons in this
absolutely
scorching
sun. Thanks everybody.
Thanks for coming, everyone.
Thanks.
There we go.